Greetings from Ohio again. This is Dr. Piya Chatterjee from the LeBron James Family Foundation School of Education, University of Akron. And had several methodological difficulties depending on the size, the nature, and the sampling. There remain some unmeasured variables because there are, numerous variables that come into play when we talk about future earnings. And it's very difficult to capture all those variables and their causal effect as such on the future earnings. Because as I just mentioned, there are complex school-specific indicators, which could be the student-teacher ratio, it could be the teacher's salaries, it could be the length of time a student stays in school or they move schools, the amount of time, which we usually call as the school term in weeks, which is usually about, 36 weeks, or years and semester system, and so on and so forth. And we are kind of looking into just the US population East-South Central division, which I'm going to talk about in just a few seconds. So the main independent variable, there are ample variables. The main causal variable that we are looking into is the schooling choice and its effect on the return to education in terms of the log linear function of wages. Schooling choice, how do we define schooling choice? We define schooling choice as the sheer parental decision of sending their kids into either private schools or public schools. And why did we choose that? Because it's a very simplistic indicator. It's a key quality parameter. And it's immensely important to understand that schooling choice can determine the human potential, the wealth collected by a nation. And accurate estimates of the payoff from these two types of schools is a highlight to indicating the general societal welfare and the well-being impact of the nation. So our approach in the study is the extension of the basic Winserian approach of kind of finding out the return to education and how it is controlled by latent variables, but more importantly, the primary variable we talk about here is the schooling choice. And as I just mentioned, the sample that we saw or we studied was this dark blue area, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, because of those rational. These are relatively poorer states, and we have there's a variety in the demographic composition, and there's a huge presence of African Americans here, and so we felt it's very important region for us to study. Begin this study here, and we kind of chose IPUMS, the Integrated Public Use Microdata Series, to extract data from these region, because these were very easy to, these were available to us in a very easy to use format. The codings were present, and we also collected sample information in terms of their demographic, their educational attainment, their occupation, and other work indicators as such from that data set itself. And just because it's a huge data set, just 5% of it could provide us with a big data size to find and analyze the questions in our research study. The methodology, as I just mentioned, we extracted close to more than 100,000 sample data pieces, of which we cleaned and filtered, and about 50,000 cases were studied. So regression analysis was conducted, and we had to do or prepare some dummy variables to find out the binaries, specifications of the independent variables. We chose school type, public school as 0 and private as 1. Educational attainment, high school is 0, otherwise 1, and so on and so forth. Gender, male 2 and female 1, it was coded that way. Race, whites as 1 and blacks as 1, others as 0. When we did it separately, when the regression analysis was done separately, filtering just for whites and filtering just for blacks. Family background, mothers and fathers' presence in the same family, the same location, or the same household. If there was a presence, we coded them as 1. If there was an absence, we coded them as 0. And potential experiences was another vital independent variable based on and it is one of the very famous Winserian standard regressor.
The last 6 minutes.
Yes, I'll finish. So I would like to present my findings under these 3 distinct headings. The very first one is, basic descriptive statistics. The next one, I'm going to show the standardized coefficients that were obtained for several key independent variables. and their effect on the dependent variable or the outcome variable, which is, of course, the future earnings. And finally, the causal relationships that could explain the effect of different variables on the outcome variable. So this is the overall, difference, wage difference, as you can, as you can see, there's a difference in the mean income between the whites and the blacks. Based on public schooling or private schooling, we found there is a gap between the blacks and the whites, as you can see. Not only so, of course, there's a difference between private and public schooling among the races, but there's also difference between the races as well. And this is the hard findings, standardized coefficients for each of these variables. And I have highlighted these, variables out here. Our key indicator was school type, and this was very close compared to, attainment of college degree or some college degree or diploma, which came pretty close to these right after these, effective variables, independent variables on the wage. So these are the two, items I would like to highlight here. Next, the overall findings, I would say that we found the school type, which means, private schooling definitely had higher wages compared to public schoolings. And we also found that the potential experience, which bore the sign positive, which means definitely there's a higher earning with greater potential experience. And educational attainment categories also had the same results. However, when we ran the similar set of regression analysis for blacks and for whites, as well as for males and females, I'm going to talk about that in the next slide as well, we found some interesting results. It was also seen that with greater number of siblings in the same household, of course, there is a decrement in wage earnings in both school types, more so in public schools. And language, if English was not the main language spoken at the household, we found that the wage earnings were less compared to the native English speakers. So when regression analysis was run for Caucasians and African Americans separately, two key findings that I would like to highlight here is there's a wage differential between public and privately schooled blacks, and the wage differential is higher for, it's more for whites compared to that for blacks. Similarly, presence of both mother and father in the same household, as I talked about in my previous slides, they had higher return to education if they had both mom and father in the same household. Also, when we ran it separately for males and females, we saw that there is a wage differential attending private and public schools, and it is marginally higher for females, that is, females earn less compared to males. More interestingly, if the females were married, point to note here, if they were unmarried, the differential was less, whereas if they were married, there was a greater gap in their wage earnings. And as I come to conclusion, I know there are ample researches going on the topic, but definitely we could look more and kind of delineate possible research avenues in terms of family economics, in terms of educational research economics at this juncture.